African Union ambassador to the United States and the Americas, Ambassador Dr. Chihombori Quayle, has been fired with immediate effect, literally. Well, she's been given till November 1st. That's when her contract will end, but she's been told to start the procedures for leaving. And in a letter dated, it came straight from Addis Ababa on the 7th of October, she was, it was signed by Musa Faka Mahatma. I think he's like the chairman, the deputy chairperson, the chairperson of the AU Commission, and it basically said E16. I can't even tell you who has ever been the AU ambassador to the US. I've never even known them. And what happened is that she was actually appointed after a year of begging, literally, she was appointed in 2016, and she has done such big things. She's almost been like an evangelical minister, rallying everyone up, saying, Africa, let's build the Africa we want. She's also been extremely controversial in calling out, the neo-colonial agenda within the African Union, and especially in calling out the French. In case you don't know who she is, or, you've been under some rock, or in case you're wondering why she was fired, just take a look at this speech. We'll be right back.
Wake up, Africa! It is so important to me that we understand our Africa from the root cause. So as if Berlin Conference was not enough, when the colonizers were leaving the continent between 1958 and 1961, France did something that was just downright terrible. Made the African leaders sign what they call the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. France made the Francophone countries sign the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. Allow me to highlight a few of the items in the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, and I urge all of you to Google it and read it. And if that does not disgust you, I don't know what will. First, the French said, well, you see, we built a few schools, a few roads, a few hospitals, taught you about the fork and knife and sitting on a table and eating with utensils. We're going to call that the colonial debt. And for that, you shall pay to perpetuity. In addition, you will deposit 85% of your bank reserves with the Minister of Finance, the French Minister of Finance. Collectively, the Minister of Finance, the French Minister of Finance, will take all your deposits. It was 85% back then. It's now down to about 60. The French minister will invest that money in the French Stock Exchange under the French name. You may or may not know the returns. Today, France is taking out of Africa, Francophone Africa, over $500 billion. Over $500 billion. We, the Africans, the poor countries, we're giving France over $500 billion a year in, year out. And no one is talking about it. The latest figures are saying for every $14 billion that France takes out of Africa, by the time they finish investing it, they're realizing upwards of $300 billion for every $14 billion. So in actuality, France is taking out of Africa trillions of dollars year in, year out. Wake up, Africa!
Well, there you have it. The fiery Dr. Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Quayle speaking against France. And, this became a huge thorn in the thigh. And one of the reasons that we find it so hard for African Union to succeed, or for the global African unity to succeed, is within the African Union itself, there are a lot of moles and puppets. So you'll see certain people are in the pocket of the British or in the pocket of the French. So whenever something happens, they're always pushing the neo-colonial agenda of the French for a little side gig, for $5,000 allegedly, or $6,000 a month, etc., etc. So they have this side gig, and their loyalty is to the former colonizer. And she had been in a thorn in the thigh, especially of the French and what they were doing, and how 14 plus, you heard her there, African countries still pay colonial tax to France. It's outrageous. It's insane. And, you know, allegedly, I'd heard this from someone who was in the know in her office about a year ago, because she had been really speaking very strongly. She was actually investigated through the French molds. They came and, you know, they checked her office. Allegedly, I don't know if they checked her house, but they launched an investigation against her, and they have been trying to intimidate her, especially because, you know, she has really been talking about, you know, Africa coming out of the colonial chains, and she has really rallied, you know, Africans in the diaspora to do amazing things too. And she's introduced many projects like the Wakanda villages. She actually got land from both Zambia and Zimbabwe at the border where the Victoria Falls are. But she was going to build a Wakanda. I think she was also going to build one in Ethiopia. You know, there's many other projects. She started a lot of, like the Africa Diaspora Foundation, the AU Diaspora Health Initiative, Pan-African Diaspora Youth Association and Women's Association. But most importantly, she was doing a lot to enlighten, you know, African Union nations through their ambassadors about what was really going on. I know recently she had actually called a meeting for all the female ambassadors to the African Union, and, you know, I mean, to Washington, D.C., etc. And she had called them to explain to them the damage of the comprehensive sexual education and how it's part of the onslaught of the, you know, homosexual agenda in Africa. So this is really, really weird. But you know what? You know, there's a lot of people who are rallying behind her. There's even a petition that was started. When I looked at it yesterday, it was they only wanted 100 people. Actually, they only wanted 1,000 people. But right now, this petition has actually reached 11,600 people. They're going for 15,000, and what they're urging for is the reinstatement of the, you know, African Union ambassador. They say that, you know, there's an outrage. They are calling for her, you know, and they say, you know, not everyone is embracing her bold but honest discourses for effecting change for the betterment of Africa. And they talk about the letter she got, and they say she was a treasure. You know, she was treasured by African diaspora and was successful in uniting African people to promote successful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. You know, and the petition also asks, you know, what is really happening? Is African Union really a puppet union? I mean, African Union ain't doing nothing. And I saw that when I went to Ethiopia in, like, earlier this year. I think when you know, in February when I went for the AU assembly, I was just like, these guys ain't doing nothing. Like, Africa, we need ourselves. It will really be interesting to see how Dr. Chihombori Quayle what did she decide to do? She had her own private practice. She was a doctor. She was doing her thing in the US. And then Zuma's wife, or first wife, I don't know if it's an ex-wife or wife, who was then head of AU, actually begged her to come and do this in the US. And she has kind of taken on this, you know, evangelical role. Let me know what you guys think about this. You know, I had also gotten a few people who reached out to me, and they had felt that maybe she had been compromised. They had asked whether she was really for the people, or whether she was for the Chinese or for the British, or whether she was controlled opposition. But, you know, she just got booted from her job. So I guess that kind of answers your question, whether she was controlled opposition or not. I will leave the link to the petition for those who are interested. I don't know, will the African big man really listen to a petition by the people? Do we have power as people like that? African continent, I hope you will also join the petition. I do really appreciate how Dr. Chihombori Quayle did really, she's been such a refreshing job, you know, voice on the global scene.